Low fat. Let's talk about why it's misrepresented, misunderstood, and in my opinion, a scam. So to understand that, let's take a trip down memory lane. You see, in the early 20th century, dietary fat wasn't even a major concern. People were more concerned about deficiencies, eating enough, getting enough micronutrients so the body can do its thing. So you contrast with today, and people are concerned about eating too much. Of course, the standards of living have changed, but there are some other factors that have influenced this reality that we live in. People consume too many calories. It wasn't until the 1950s when the 7 countries study came out, which concluded a strong link between dietary saturated fat intake, along with cholesterol, and heart disease. Now, at that time, in many nations, not just the USA or Europe, also New Zealand, Australia, heart disease was considered a pandemic, if you will. It was the leading cause of death for people in their 40s. So you can understand that given what the science said, everyone was terrified of fat. Now, what this did was introduce the first what we call low-fat diets. Now, the reason why it's a scam is because I know the real impetus for the creation of low-fat diets. It was this. It was money. But that's not what the science said. Low-fat diets were driven by the fact that they correlated, a strong correlation, and they linked to and potentially caused heart disease. The food industry capitalized on this. It was actually cheaper to produce products that were higher in sugar and lower in fat, whilst maintaining the taste, because sugar was more abundant and sugar is cheaper. Of course, the media kicked in full steam ahead, books, articles, television programs, and Good Morning America health segments as to why people should be opting for low-fat options instead of full-fat options. The food industry, along with the media, had a combined effect, a synergistic effect, to really push for that mass adoption of low-fat foods. Cha-ching! Now, what wasn't marketed was that this pivot away from fat and dietary fat was going to be accompanied by an increase in sugar and other additives in order to maintain the texture and taste of these foods. Sugar predominantly for the taste and additives predominantly for the texture. So you get your salad dressings, your yogurts, your cereals, which are relatively high in fat and surprisingly high in sugar. Some of them aren't that high in fat and just really high in sugar. Remember what I said to you before, cereal is dessert. Dessert for breakfast is what it should be called. DFB. Now, if we think about this, to make matters worse, the marketing was really easy. Because as we know, fat, 1 gram of fat has 9 calories, 1 gram of protein and carbs have 4 calories, 1 gram of alcohol has 7 calories, the one you never hear about. Because of that disparity in caloric content per gram, now you have a situation whereby low-fat foods could also be marketed as low-calorie foods. And low-calorie means healthy, right? Wrong. The food industry is all about making moolah. So when the science says low-fat is better for you and high-fat's bad for you, of course you get stuff like margarine, which is basically hell on earth. I call it the devil's treat. It's the devil's spread. It's not butter, and it's not better. That's BS. So everybody starts consuming more margarine, low-fat, whacking on top of bread. So now we're doing toast as opposed to eggs and avocados. So you might have heard when you were younger, don't eat more than 2 eggs a week, to which I responded by eating 28. 28 eggs a week, thank you. One of the dangerous and unfortunate side effects and consequences of pushing low calorie, low fat was that now people had snacks being produced. The food industry were producing low calorie, low fat snacks. That doesn't mean healthy. Here's the issue. So now snack consumption shot through the roof. People are eating more snacks, taking their eye off the ball, being less health conscious whilst thinking they're being more health conscious and becoming complacent. So now we have snacking frequency on the up, total calorie consumption on the up, even though we're being marketed low calorie foods. It wasn't until the late 20th century and the early 21st century that people started to realize the knock-on effects, the consequences, the side effects, the insidious effects of low calorie and low fat foods. Now here's the thing. Here's where I just can't agree with watching your calories like a hawk, because submitting to that principle of it's all about calories, what we call CECO, calories in, calories out, submitting to that principle and that belief that it's all about calories and nothing else matters, almost guarantees that you eat bullshit with the knowledge that it's lower in calories. Gives a fuck. Me personally, not just from what I've read, but how I feel physically. You hear a lot of people talk about cutting out sugar and how they look and feel different almost instantly, like a week later. That's because this stuff is real. Forget what the literature says. Literature is often biased. People pay for these studies, the big wigs, and the big wigs have incentives or have agendas. They have objectives. So sometimes you need to just have your own experience and make a decision. Or anecdotal experience at that point becomes very important. So me personally, I would choose fats over sugar any day, any given Sunday. I will choose dietary fats over dietary sugars, especially processed ones, bar trans fat, with the exception of trans fats, horrible trans fats that you get from frozen pizzas and Chicago town pizzas. And those foods are usually higher on the insulin index score, meaning a faster, sharper spike in insulin. And trust me, you don't want that. That's a consequence of removing fat. As we know from some of my earlier videos, a fast and sharp spike in insulin is always followed by a sharp drop in insulin, which equals hungry again,